how do we return to that beautiful frequency of oneness and togetherness and inclusiveness in this very dualistic reality? How do we get back to that feeling of oneness and truth without pushing back on what appears to be the other? Today, I want to give you a very clear, simple, and surprising and very practical way of doing that, where you can and will return to that infinite state of oneness, which is who you are, without pushing back on the other. It's a very simple way. It's going to be surprising, perhaps even a little bit challenging, but as you hear it, you will know it and it'll make sense. If you are new to this channel, welcome. You are in the right place. My name is Hedley. I'm a Law of Assumption coach. And of course, if you are returning, thank you for being here. I really appreciate your presence here on my channel. If you'd like to know more about me or my offerings, including one-to-one coaching, my courses, or my book, I Am Money, you'll find all of those details in the box below this video or at my website, youaretheone.com.au. But if I could ask you for a very simple favor, if you are enjoying my channel and these videos and you're finding them useful, please do press that subscribe button, which sends the message to Google and YouTube that yes, I would love more of this empowering information. So thank you for doing that, and let's get into it. Now, before we do get into today's topic, I want to share another beautiful, amazing, jaw-dropping I Am success story, which I experienced just this morning. And a lot of these success stories, they are simple, but they are so powerful and they are so awesome, and they still blow my mind. So today I met up with a couple of dear friends of mine down at the beach, and we went for a long walk. They have a dog, I brought Dora, and it's a really big beach. So we were just talking and walking and throwing the ball and having a lovely time. And then we said goodbye. I went home and I left them at their car. 15 minutes later, I sent them a text just to say, hey, it was so great to catch up with you. Safe travels. I'll see you when you get back. And I got a text response back from them very quickly saying, hey, it was great to see you too. Unfortunately, we lost our key somewhere along the beach. And I immediately was like, oh shit. It's a long beach. And also the tide was coming in. So there were plenty of times where the key could have fallen out of their pocket or it just got lost somewhere up the beach. It's a big beach and we weren't concentrating. That key could have been anywhere. So I texted them back and I said, hey, I'm coming down. I'll be there in about 5 minutes. And they said, yep, great. And then they sent another text saying, hey, we've had a look. We can't find it. We're heading back to the car. Now, from the point that I got that text, all I was doing was commanding, I am the keys and I am found. I am the keys and I am found. As I commanded that, I was also aware of another part of myself going, oh my God, there's no way we're going to find those keys. They could be anywhere. And I just kept coming back to the command, I am the keys and I am found. And anytime on my way down to the beach, I mean, it's only a few minutes, anytime I thought, oh my God, where, like that could be in the water, it would be buried under the sand, you know, like there's no way we're going to find those keys. I am the keys and I am found. I am the keys and I am found. So I arrived down to the beach and I parked the car, and they were actually coming off the beach as I was walking up to it. And as they were coming out, they held up the key. Within those few minutes between the affirming I am the keys and I am found, while they were walking back to the car, having given up on the search for the key, a surfer had come up to them and said, hey, is this yours? And they were beyond surprised because first of all, they were like, where did you find it? And how did you know that it belonged to us? Now that was 3 minutes from the point I started commanding to the point where that surfer came up to them. So by the time I arrived at the beach, my reality had reflected that back, that I am the key and I am found. And that is how simple and quickly and easily it can work. If you would like to know more about the I am technique, I have a whole playlist on that. So please do keep sharing your I am success stories. This technique is the easiest and simplest of all the techniques because it is the easiest and simplest. The challenging part of this is remembering this technique. That's the key. So keep your success stories coming in because every success story builds the faith for others. And if others are just starting out with this technique, it just helps remind them that, okay, it works for everybody else, it can work for me. And that is absolutely the case. So I just wanted to share that. All right, let's get into today's video. So everything that I am talking about here on my channel, I am putting it to the test on myself first. So today is one of those videos where this is something that I have put to test on myself and it works, and I'm going to share that story with you. And then we're going to apply this to some of the things that we may be seeing in reality, whether that's discrimination, whether that's inequality, racism, sexism, classism, ageism, any ism. We can actually apply this to that and neutralize any resistance to it and watch reality reorganize itself and reflect that neutrality back. Because what we have been doing for centuries and lifetimes, and it hasn't been working, is pushing back on what appears to be the other, pushing back on what appears to be different. There's this constant push and pull between what appears to be opposite sides, and that just creates more division. So no matter what you believe in, whatever you believe in, there is going to be an opposite. There is going to be the other. That's the contrasting state. Now, the temptation is to push back on that, or to fight that, or to stand up to that, or to whatever that. And that only creates more division. We've been doing it for centuries. That's why we continue to have wars. That's why we are constantly in conflict with the other, because clearly what we've been doing isn't the answer. And I'm going to give you the answer today. I know that's a bold statement. So I'm going to give you a very simple example, and then I am going to share a very personal story of how this really does work, so that you have the evidence that yes, it does work. Here on the screen, there is a green dot. While it is just a green dot and there is no contrast, it can simply enjoy the state of oneness of being a beautiful green dot. But then in order to know itself, it had to create the duality, it had to create the contrast. In order for that green dot to know it's a green dot, it has to create something other than itself. And so it produces a red dot. So from the green dot, out comes a red dot. Now the green dot has contrast. Now it can know itself as a green dot because of the presence of something that is other than itself. But how do you return to the state of oneness when you are looking at something that is other than yourself? It creates resistance. You now have division of the one, the division of the duality that came from the oneness in order for the oneness to have the experience of itself. The same thing appearing different in resistance to itself. So the question is, how do you get back to that state of oneness from within the duality? You can't just get back to oneness because you are aware of the presence of the other. And in order to get back to oneness, you cannot be in resistance to the other. So how do you get back? Let's think of it this way. I'm going to put it into an equation. Oneness minus duality is less than oneness. Clearly that doesn't make sense. That's impossible. You cannot have less than the whole. The whole is all there is. So trying to get rid of the duality, trying to remove the duality or turn away from the duality or ignore the duality is not the answer. That's going to create the resistance, which leads to more division. So that is not the way to do it. And of course, that is the way we've been doing it, and it hasn't been working. The actual correct equation is oneness plus duality equals the Trinity. When we include the duality, when we see the duality as an addition to ourselves as the oneness, we end up with the Trinity. And it is through the Trinity that we neutralize the duality and return to oneness. I'm going to explain this further. We have to go in the opposite direction to get where we want. And that is why I love this work so much, because it is so unexpected and it is so surprising. Oneness plus duality equals the Trinity. Now, what that means is you now have an observer, the one who is observing both dots, the green dot and the red dot. I'm using the dots as a neutral example. Now, the Trinity includes the observer. So who is the observer? And of course, the observer is I am. So I am observing the green dot and I am observing the red dot. I am the green dot. I am the red dot. I am going to take you through a personal example because this is probably very conceptual at this point. It's not really making sense, or maybe it is, but I want to make this make sense at a personal level. One of the qualities about me that you can't see through this video is that my height is 186 centimeters, which in feet is 6 feet 1.5. So I am almost 6'2" in height. Now, for some of you, perhaps most of you, you may be thinking, oh wow, that's tall. And of course, that has been the story that I have lived with for most of my life until a couple of years ago when I actually did exactly what I'm about to share with you. Now, I did not know I was tall until I went to daycare. And I'm going to show you this photo. This photo is one of my favorite photos because it's so sweet and innocent, but it also tells you the story of my life. I did not know that I was different in any way until I had contrast. Until I went to kindergarten, I had no idea that I was different. I just was the way I was. And when I went to kindergarten, I learned that the way I was very different to everybody else because there was nobody else who was as tall as I was. I was on my own in that. So I grew up believing myself to be different. So the story of being tall really affected me because it created a very real and obvious sense of separation from me to all of the other kids. Not only that, I had a really weird name, Headley. So I was very tall and I had a strange name, Headley. And I was really being targeted because of my differences. And it made my life very, very, very challenging. I moved through a lot of schools because I was being bullied at every school and it was just too hard to handle. I couldn't handle it. So my parents would take me out of that school, move me to another school, and of course I would get bullied again. So wherever I went, I just got bullied relentlessly. Now, I have good friends from my school today, but during school, it was a very traumatic time. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere because of how different I was. So as I grew up through my teenage years and my 20s, that story of being tall just continued to stay with me and it just continued to intensify. And it felt like my life was governed by my height, and I hated it. So the more I resisted my height and how tall I was, the stronger that story came back at me. Now that story continued until I came into this work, and of course I came into I Am, and I started I Aming everything. And I remember the moment when I was driving home when I suddenly had the thought to put I Am in front of the opposite. And I remember the feeling I got when I claimed I am short. It was a visceral experience, and that's why I remember it. Because all of my life I've been claiming I am tall, I'm not short. If I'm just on my own, then I'm just me. But I can only be tall if there is a short person or a person who is shorter than me in my reality. Now, if my reality is my reflection, then I am that. So I said, I am tall, I am short. And I just kept repeating it because it just felt so good. I'm tall, I'm short, I'm tall, I'm short. And then I said, I am the perfect height. And I can tell you that since that moment in the car when I claimed I am short, I could probably count on my hand the amount of times that my height has come up in conversation in the last couple of years. It just doesn't. This story of my height has dissolved. It has been neutralized because I neutralized it by putting I am in front of the opposite and then claiming I am the perfect height or I am the infinite height. And that neutralized the division. Now, the only way I could get to that realization was with I am. Now, that word not, where we say I am this and I am not that, that is what causes the divide. The divide happens within us first and then it gets outpictured. And that's what creates the division. In order to get out of the divisive nature of duality, you have to remember the observer and you have to remove the word not. When I said I am tall, I am short, I am the infinite height, or I am the perfect height, the entire dynamic dissolved. And for the last couple of years, I have just been enjoying being myself without this acknowledgement or awareness of the thing that made me different my whole life, it just doesn't come up. I'm not thinking of it. They're not saying it. It's gone. It's like it doesn't exist. It's like I'm just one with everyone else. I'm just part of the whole, which of course I am. I was just in the illusion that I wasn't. And that's what we are all experiencing. We are experiencing the illusion of the other, and we have forgotten that the other comes from us in order to help us have the experience of ourselves through our individual nature. So I'm going to take you through another one. Again, I'm going to use myself as the example. A woman. I am a woman. It doesn't matter what gender you are. There is always a contrasting gender. For example, if you are non-binary, your contrasting state would be binary. So you can just use whatever the opposite is for you. But for me, I'm a woman. So my direct opposite is a man. So I will say I'm a woman. I'm not a man. In order to get out of the divisiveness of duality, we must go through the Trinity, the power of three, which requires the observer. I am a woman. I am a man. I am the infinite gender. Now, this is where the magic happens. Remember, my reality is pushed out, reflecting me back. So if there are men out there, I am men. I'm a woman. Yes, I can claim that. I'm a woman. But over there, that's a man. I'm not a man. I have just created the consciousness of division within myself, which we know as sexism outside of ourselves. Discrimination starts within. It doesn't start out there. It starts within us, and it starts with that word not. When you say, I am this, I am not that, you have just created the division within yourself, and that must get outpictured. And that's what we experience as racism, sexism, classism, all of the isms. It starts within us. Speaking of racism, now this is a big one. This is why I've left it till last. As long as we are seeing the other as separate to us, we're going to be seeing all of those stories of separateness in our reality until we remember this. So I am a white woman. I'm Australian. I'm Caucasian. I would be classed as white. Anything that makes you individual will have an opposite contrasting state. So the natural opposite of white is black. It would be natural for me to say, hey, I'm white, I'm not black. Or if you're black or dark or brown, it would be natural for you to say, I'm black or dark or brown, I'm not white. Now that word not is what creates the division. It starts within, and then it gets pushed out and reflected back as racism. In order for us to move beyond the consciousness of racism, sexism, classism, any kind of story around separation, we have to go through the Trinity, which requires the inclusion of the observer. The observer's name is I am. I am white, I am black. I am the infinite color, or I'm the infinite race, or I'm the infinite ethnicity. The only way you can return to the frequency of oneness is through the Trinity, which is I am this, I am that, I am the infinite neutrality. By doing this, you are essentially removing the word not from your consciousness. You're putting I am in front of what appears to be the illusion of the other. That contrasting state that enables you to have the experience of your individual nature is part of you, but we can't return to that state of oneness within ourselves by pushing back on the contrasting state. Oneness plus duality equals the Trinity. So it's kind of funny because we're going in the opposite direction to the oneness, but that's what I love about this. Everything here is a surprise, and there's clues along the way. So now you know this is how you resolve any differences or duality or divisiveness in your reality. I hope this helps and inspires you. Have a play with that one and just watch your reality reorganize itself to reflect that beautiful neutrality and oneness back to you. Report your success back as always. Thank you for listening. I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.